It is 2 o'clock, and I call to order a special meeting of the City Council of the City of Victorville. And the City Council sitting is the Library Board of Trustees, Southern California Logistics Rail Authority, Southern California Logistics Airport Authority, successor agency to the Victorville Redevelopment Agency, the Victorville Joint Powers Financing Authority, the Victorville Water District, and the Victorville Housing Trust. May we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Kennedy?
Here.
Councilmember McEachran?
Here.
Councilmember McGrady?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Cox?
Here.
Mayor Garcia?
Here. At this time, we will have our Pledge of Allegiance, and it will be led by Mayor Pro Tem Jim Cox. Please stand.
Face the flag, place your hand on your heart, and repeat after me. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have one item on our agenda this evening, and that's the strategic plan discussion. The recommendation is, any recommendation is at the discretion of the City Council, and follows, I don't have the page. Oh, thank you, sir. Here.
No, I think you're right now, it's just whatever you want to say,
Okay.
let Doug go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for being here. We really do appreciate that you made the time and to be here today, even though we have beautiful weather. We need the rain. El Niño, I guess, came to pay us a visit. At this time, I believe we have our city manager, Doug Robertson, who will be speaking.
Yes, just to talk a little bit about the purpose of today's session for members of the council as well as the public. This is intended to be a refresh of the strategic planning session we had in 2014. That was our first ever strategic planning discussion. We went into it sort of wide open, not knowing exactly what was going to happen, not knowing exactly what the outcomes might be, as far as how much of the session would be focused on sort of lofty visioning versus actual hard sort of planning, work planning. Ultimately, what we ended up with, based on the desires of those that were present, was more of a work plan than a true sort of heavy-duty strategic plan with steps and goals and whatnot. So as an initial effort, I think everyone was very pleased with the product, with the coming together, I'll say, of not only the council but also city management, both executive management as well as department heads. It's been 2 years into a 3-year plan, and we thought it would be important to sort of have a refresh, kind of take stock of where we are, see if there's anything that perhaps was missing from the sort of 7 priorities that were laid out by the City Council, and see if there's anything new we need to add, if there's anything that we can take off that list at this point, or at least make a determination that the work portion is complete. Now we simply are waiting for some of the results, perhaps. That meeting took place in this room and had more participants at the table. It had all 5 city council members as well as myself and Keith and I think it was 5 or so department heads, sort of interacting, going through the steps that our consultant Laura Mason-Smith walked us through. This time we're focused more on truly the council's goals. So the session today will focus on really the 5 of them. Keith and I are here to answer questions. I know we have, I think, all of our department heads and some division heads as well here to answer questions should they come up. But we really want the focus to be on the 5 council members, not on staff. It's our intention to have this be sort of the first of a recurring schedule to have sort of a priority, goal, strategic planning session in even-numbered years at the start of the year, January, February timeframe, with the idea being that, in odd-numbered years. Got that wrong. Immediately following an election, there's not always a turnover on the council, but there can be. And so the next month after being sworn in, we want to get input from that potential new council member or members. Not that we want to see anybody leave, but it's part of the job is those seats are not guaranteed. Sometimes council members leave, as happened a year ago, deciding not to run. Councilmember Negretti is new, and I don't want to speak for him, but I think he's had some frustration in that the strategic planning that was done before he was on the council without his input for obvious reasons, and now we've gone a year with not a sort of a formal process like this. So learning from that, we thought we should bring this back to get his input as well as input from the other 4 council members, and then set it up to where that doesn't happen in the future, so that we get that input right from the start. I think the plan to look at a 2 to 3 year period was a good one 2 years ago. Some of the things that were discussed back then was the fact that although it's nice to have sort of the 20-year vision in mind, that some future city council from this one may or may not have the same priorities and goals, and it was more important to focus on sort of shorter term, to sort of lay out those priorities, long-term priorities, but to really focus on a 2 to 3 year period and what meaningfully can be accomplished in that period. So that's really the purpose of today's meeting, is to refresh and to kind of kick us off on a fairly regular cycle of these. So with that, unless there's questions, I'll turn it over to Laura Mason-Smith.
Before we start, you mentioned there's 7 items that the council had discussed and essentially agreed upon. You want to have those?
I think Laura is going to pass those out.
Good.
Yes. Why don't I go through the agenda, and then we can talk about where that flows for the session, and then we can make adjustments if you'd like to.
Okay.
Thank you for the opportunity to be back as your facilitator. So my role is really just to keep things on track and on time, make sure you can all participate well. I'll capture all your comments up here, and those will be reproduced in a summary document for you to be able to use throughout the next year. So the process we were going to follow on the agenda was to gather, again, just your thoughts on what you value about Victorville and what some of the city's accomplishments over the last 2 years since the planning session in 2014, and maybe a high point for you over the last year personally also. And then look at what so we're building, just making sure you're all on the same page before you look at what you see as the objectives for the coming years. So 2 years ago, you identified what you saw as the city's strengths, what was working well, and what you saw as the city's challenges. Rather than starting from scratch, which I think would take place when you have your more formal strategic planning session in a year, I brought back what you came up with 2 years ago, so you'll have the opportunity to look at that and say, are those still the strengths and challenges? Are there some things that have changed since then? Are there things that we want to add or take off? And so again, making sure you're all on the same page of understanding how you see things. And then looking at the 3-year goals that you established 2 years ago and saying, do we still see those as the 2017 goals? And what you did 2 years ago, you had some 7 high-level goals, and then you had specific objectives to accomplish those. And so once you are in sync on what you see as the goals, then we can look at the objectives and say, are some of those done? And Doug would be giving you a report out on what's been accomplished on each of those. And you can say, are there other objectives we want to add? Are there some that have been accomplished we want to take them off? And then my understanding is those will be the foundation for the city's work plan, so the department heads, et cetera, will then put together the action plans to accomplish those. So, so we'll be able to use what you did 2 years ago, so you're not necessarily starting from scratch. And we have public comment session at the very end of this. We are estimating finishing at 7. If you finish sooner, we'll just finish. So we don't need to take, if it goes more quickly, we'll just end. So that's the plan. Does that look like that will get you where you were hoping to be by the end of tonight? Any adjustments you'd like to make?
I think so.
Okay. All right. Well, let's just jump into it then. So just a chance for each of you at the table just to share your thoughts. What so the folks that I see that work the best together get to know each other as people, not just in their formal roles. So maybe just what's been a high point for you personally over the last year? What is something that you value about Victorville, that you love about Victorville? And also, what's a city accomplishment, or maybe it's 2 accomplishments that you've seen over the last year or 2? I'll capture what you value and the accomplishments. So the first one I won't capture, but it's just good to hear. So anyone can start who wants to, and then we'll just go around the table and hear from everybody. So who would like to start?
Well, I think what I really love about Victorville, first of all, is our city. And it's people-friendly.
Okay.
And what I see is that not only the city council, but all the city staff, they do go out of their way to accommodate the needs of the people.
Right. And how about an accomplishment for the city over the last year? You can just pick one that's been a high point.
Maintaining our roads, that has been a great accomplishment
Great.
on my part.
Great, thanks. Shall we just go, do you want to jump around or just?
Sure, I'll go.
Okay.
One of the high points, or what I value most anyway about Victorville, is the airport. And having an asset like that and a driver of job creation that we can grow with as a community is something that I believe is an asset we could tap in the future. But as far as a accomplishment, I'm under the impression that we're pretty much leased up, or that we're at capacity right now, and we would like to grow more. There's quite a bit left to do. So, I mean, that's a positive.
Okay, great. Thanks. Who next?
Well, what I like best about the city is my neighborhood, my home, and my friends, and
Right.
you know, the people I've had the great pleasure of connecting with in the city. I'm happy with our financial accomplishments. I think we're on solid financial ground. I don't think all of our financial challenges are over. We're not in Fat City by any means, but we're certainly stable, and we're moving in the right direction.
That's a big one from 2 years ago.
It really is, yeah.
Great. Who's next?
Well, I was going to say Rose, but you brought it up. So I think another thing that's been great over the last year is just adding additional deputies and bringing on Bloodhound, which they'll be active in the next couple of months. I don't know if Sam's clear or not, but I think that's going to be a big deal for our city and for our constituents.
Okay.
Obviously, what I value about Victorville is just our diversity. I think that's been brought up before. I think we have very diverse citizens, and I think that's a huge benefit to the city. Of course, I'm happy about getting rid of red light cameras this last year.
Yes.
That's just me. But.
Great, thanks.
I think one of the things that the council can be proud of is the fact that we have gained the trust and the credibility of the public. If you will look back, we were getting, the city, us, we're getting terribly beaten up from a lot of directions, including letters to the editor, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If you will look very carefully for the past several months, you haven't read very much negative about the city. And that tells a lot of the hard work of the council and the staff and the fact that we have gained that public trust back. And now we have to build on it.
So it's a foundation.
The
that is
foundation.
built on.
It's a
Okay.
big foundation.
Want to hear from us down here, Laura?
Yeah, I think that would be good.
As far as a high point for the city, I think the work we've done on transparency, open government project, and open data project that's still ongoing, it has helped gain that public trust, but it also is putting Victorville back into a leadership position in the valley.
Okay. What else?
In the Victor,
Yeah.
Not the Mojave River.
heard enough about Mojave River Valley.
I would add, working with a harmonious city council, which has been, I think, really beneficial. There's been differences of opinion, but the way you have approached it has been, professional. It's just a very good working group, and I think everybody's respectful of one another and committed to work together.
And I think that leadership issue is important too, because we have a lot of history with other communities, and it hasn't all been real friendly. Some of it's been acrimonious in the past, and I just don't see that today. I'm not sure everybody would agree we are the leader, but I think we have certainly taken a leadership position in important areas. We're certainly the biggest.
Yeah.
No question about that.
Over the couple of years, we've seen quite a bit of growth, and
Yeah.
positive growth, real growth. Good commercial attraction, retail attraction.
Even through the recession, which has been impressive.
Through the recession, and it's continued from that period of time.
So you said retail and
Commercial.
Commercial.
Okay.
Industry's coming.
I remember when we got our first Starbucks, we were on the map. Now we got a BJ's and a Krispy Kreme going, so we're really on the map.
Any others you would like to add?
Made major infrastructural improvements at the airport,
Okay.
runway, taxiway, the fuel system.
Yeah, our ability to secure grants is
Yep.
a huge benefit to the city and specifically the airport.
So just the ability to get grants.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think staff has to be, I don't think they hear this enough, but they do an amazing job at securing those grants for doing things like the runway improvements to purchasing equipment for our fire department. Those things that have happened over the last couple of years have been huge for us, because that would have been money we would never have had and could have never done anything out of our general fund or even airport authority funds. So those grants and the ability to secure them have been a huge thing.
Any others you would like to add?
I think our transition to proactive code enforcement has been a success. I mean,
Okay.
it's sort of in its infancy still, but I think it's going well.
I don't see flags flying around anymore.
No, the commercial went very well and quickly. The residential is just a big monster to tackle.
Big difference from 2
I don't know how much you
Oh,
can, I don't know how much you can really draw conclusions about this, but 5 years ago, it seemed like every single council meeting, we had 10 people standing up complaining about some outrageous neighbor and the barking dogs, and they were carrying guns while they're out watering their lawns, and complaining about just unhappiness in neighborhoods. And Brentwood sticks out in my mind, but it certainly wasn't the only one. We don't hear that today. I don't know if it's all solved or if people just gave up complaining. It's hard to know.
Well, you're just saying that because I was the mayor then, but...
But we're just not hearing about that.
No, you're right, we aren't.
And I was kind of surprised at the comment in the Daily Press today about rising crime rates. I was not aware that we had rising crime rates in this community. That's surprising. So,
Yeah, I saw that and
I didn't see
didn't
that.
agree with that. Yeah.
I'd be interested in hearing what the chief has to say about that, but not for today. But I see a decline in that, at least from where we're sitting.
No, I talked to quite a few people in the Brentwood area, and they tell me that things have settled down. I don't know if it's because there's more police patrolling or what it is. But I haven't actually talked to anyone in the police department to find that out. But I know they did say that things have quieted down. That's quite an improvement.
Two major efforts to do some code changes to our design standards for new residential housing as well as neighborhoods that ultimately were approved. We haven't had enough development to really see the outcomes of that yet, but ultimately both of those efforts came before the council with support from the building industry and ultimately were approved.
Another positive is the sales tax revenue and property tax revenue seem to be increasing or going in the right direction, which is very positive considering where we've been.
Yeah.
And I think we ought to take some credit, I suppose, for negotiating the deal we negotiated with Macerich at the mall. I think that we've really seen an improvement at the mall, thanks to the sales tax sharing arrangement. Is that the right word or wrong word to use? Okay. But there was some criticism of that, but I think
It has proven to be...
the mall
a good
has
decision.
really stepped up.
And you said that's as a result of the sales tax sharing?
Yeah,
Or
we
that-
negotiated an arrangement with Macerich. It brought in Macy's and the big improvement in Penny's,
Sears.
Sears,
And there's other...
Sporting goods.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that.
and they really remodeled the whole exterior of that mall,
Okay.
brought it up to date. Because it was in a decline. It was heading in absolutely the wrong direction.
Completely agree.
Any other key ones you'd like to add? What I'll do is I'll keep these up, and if you think of things, just tell me and I'll run over and add it to the list. But this is a significant list to build on. Let me, and I'll move those while you're doing this. So these are some of the key accomplishments over the last couple of years. Let's look at what you identified as city strengths and city challenges. I just clipped them so you could pull them apart because, as you'll recall, those of you that were here, sometimes there was something on the strengths list. It was also on the challenges list. It was a strength, but perhaps it could be better, et cetera. So they're on different colors, and you can look these over. And then let's just have a conversation as to, are these still the same strengths or challenges? Have they changed? Are there some things now that we should add? And let you take a moment and then let's look at them.
Just as a reminder, these are numbered just to keep them separate, not
Thank you. Yeah.
as a value ranking in any way.
Right. Thanks for clarifying that.
Yeah, I think when I look at the strengths, all the strengths are still the same. I mean, I'm sure that we can add more to that, but I don't see anything on there that I would want to remove or say isn't currently still a strength.
So what you had, just for the benefit of others, was great air and climate, the city's location on the I-15 in the heart of the desert, that Victorville is really the downtown of the high desert, that the SCLA is a huge strength, and we'll see some of these are mirrored in what you see as accomplishments and development going well. I mean, strong municipal utilities, water, wastewater, gas, electricity, the sewer plant working well, the water district's healthy, a strong and effective council that works together cohesively as a team for the best interests of the city, transparency of council actions and activities, smart, capable staff and council support for the staff, revitalized mall and related business growth, the major freeway interchange that was completed 2 years ago, the balanced budget and the focus on maintaining a balanced budget, the variety of zoning in the city and the good commercial corridors, good freeway frontage, code enforcement and related positive feedback about results, gangs not having deep roots in any specific area of the city, and the HOPE program, which was homeless outreach through proactive enforcement. So how about others? You still see these as strengths, and are there any key strengths that you would want to add to that list? It's really what makes Victorville unique, different from other municipalities.
Well, I think, I would imagine Councilmember Kennedy would echo this as well as the rest of the council, but I think our financial position is so much better off today than it was even 2 years ago, or even 6 or 8 years ago. So, you know, and that really is a strength. Although we talk about having a balanced budget, I mean, it took a lot of work to get there, but today it's so much more than just having a balanced budget. We're so much stronger financially.
And that's largely the result of careful, really careful management, money management. Because revenue-wise, we're in a place where we were, what, 15 years ago, I'll bet. That huge spike experience that we had in the early 2000s, I mean, we just shrunk the whole city operation down to live within our means. And I don't hear anybody complaining about services not being delivered as a result of the contraction we've done in the city. Other than streets, we would all like to see some major improvements in streets.
So significant improvements in finances even in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
How about challenges, unless there are other strengths to add?
You know, I got a strength real quick.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of how to phrase it exactly, but I continue to be impressed, and even more so than I was 2 years ago, because I've had a chance to get out into the field more often, but just impressed by the pride in specifically our field staff, whether that's in, you know, parks, recreation, and especially in public works. They're proud of their city, they're proud to work for this city, and it shows in the work that they do. I think that's one reason why we didn't have as many complaints as maybe we could have during the recession, was because those field staff really got the job done.
Even with the challenges.
It's hard for me to believe this, but I'm looking at the challenges list, and I don't see streets or roads anywhere on there yet. It was as much of a challenge, if not more, back 2 years ago than it is today.
Yeah.
I think that continues to be a challenge for us.
I agree.
Getting past the SEC and that whole thing will be a challenge that hopefully we overcome this year. So those are two that I added
Yeah.
to the list.
Right.
I think a challenge worth pursuing. We have seen tremendous improvement. It was, let me back up, it wasn't unusual just a few years ago to hear people say, I'm going to move out of this community. I've had enough of this community. I'm going to move to, but it was someplace rather than here. And we are now hearing, as we see the staff and the pride they have, we're now hearing from people who are proud to be a part of the community. And so the challenge is to get those individuals, including the business people, the general public, involved in the community. You become a part of it. Because for the most part, that being embarrassed, being angry, is diminished substantially. And now to get those people involved and become a part of the city, for the city to meet their goals, I think becomes very important. Not sure how to do it, but I think it's important that we figure out how to do it and then work on that.
And I wonder if some of that isn't because a lot of our business owners who operate businesses in Victorville live in Apple Valley. I don't know how to quantify that, but I think there is a perception that it is a more desirable place to live because of larger lots and bigger houses and that sort of thing. So as people prosper in their business, I think there might be a tendency that they move in that direction. So now their interests are sort of split between the two communities they're involved in.
So that's a challenge.
I guess it is.
Okay.
I mean, it is what it is.
Sure. Anything on the challenge list that should come off, or other things that you think should be here?
Well, redevelopment's gone away. I mean, I don't know that that's necessarily a challenge anymore, although it might present opportunities going forward, but you can get into that a little bit later. The homeless issue by the river has been cleaned up, but homelessness is still an issue.
But that's an issue that's just beyond our ability to handle, even though we need to work toward it and cooperate. But that's got to be an involvement of all the cities here in the county, particularly the county. It's got to be an issue that someone mentioned today, I didn't see the paper, that there was a call in the newspaper that we need to get more involved to help the homeless or do something, City of Victorville. I don't know if it's true or not. I didn't see the paper, but that was my understanding.
It was.
we need to cooperate with the entities that are trying to find a solution. But believe me, individually, we will solve nothing. But cooperatively with the other cities, and particularly the county, so that we can spend the money more efficiently, more effectively, and get more done, could have an effect. So I think that the challenge is who heads that up, and how do we approach it? So far, I don't think we've addressed that. Maybe we have.
Am I right in thinking that we don't have the financial resources for homelessness? That's a county-funded activity?
It is any kind of social service like that is county funded, yes. It's a county service. It doesn't mean that we couldn't, but typically that's more of a county function.
We do have small amounts benefiting through CDBG, but they're small in comparison to the larger need.
And one thing that was on this list that we don't seem to be talking much about are gangs.
Yeah, I was going to just say the same thing, but Sam's not here, so I was going to ask that question, but we don't talk about that.
It doesn't seem to be in front of us much, whereas a couple of years ago, I think we were
It was always
always seemed to be concerned about it.
So that one is on, that's right at the top of this list. Not that these are in priority order, but it did come up. And so that is still an issue, but you're not hearing about it as much.
Yeah, but I have to believe it belongs there.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, we can't take that off.
Yeah, I don't know if we take it off, but I think that maybe add to a strength is that we have, through management of public safety, have dealt with that problem quite a bit, and it's a lot less than it used to be.
Well, that
I mean,
definitely.
that's a huge strength because, Jimmy, you go back to talking about people wanting to move out of the community. That was one of the main reasons that people wanted to move out of the community is because of that type of element that was occurring in here, and we just don't hear about that.
Well, they dissolved all that major problem.
Yeah.
I think that's a major priority of the sheriff. I'm not that familiar with his specific programs, but I got to believe part of the reason we don't hear about it is because they're handling it better. I think.
Number 5 on here, the ongoing effects of the economic recession. Well, at this point, given the growth that we see in both the sales tax and property tax, I don't know that that's still a challenge. I mean, certainly there's some lasting effects, but I don't know that it's really today a challenge today. It's sort of, this is the new normal. I'm not a big fan of that phrase, but I don't think there's anything going to change there in the near future.
Yeah, I would agree.
I think the businesses that could adapt have adapted, and the ones that couldn't are probably gone. Or are...
Well, even 7, appearance of a lack of safety, we don't have
Yeah,
that.
I have that question.
Yeah, we don't have that.
I didn't know what that meant.
I mean, it came down to the people. Back then we heard expressions of a fear or a lack of safety, even though the data would show that crime rates and other factors were on the way down. So we were trying to figure out what is it that is making people feel unsafe. Part of that was code enforcement. So a lot of our code enforcement efforts, I think, has helped mitigate that. I don't know that it's gone or not. I think I might be too close to everything that we're doing to really be a good gauge as to whether or not that's gone, the appearance of a lack of safety.
Yeah. 2 years ago, I believe it was still, a problem for women to go to the mall, even, and walk to their car.
Yeah.
And I thought I was being followed by 2 characters, and I kind of believe that they were, except that other people seemed to be walking up towards where I was, and they went the opposite way. But I felt like my life was in danger,
Yeah, this goes back to strengths, and we talked about it with respect to the mall, but I mean, you think about what we've done there and that agreement we entered into, and the people that are actually going back into that mall and shopping now that haven't been there for over a decade. I mean, my mom, my mother-in-law, these are people that generally would not go into that mall in the last 10 years, and now that Macy's is there, they go there, you know, and it's not just Macy's, but they'll traverse throughout the mall because of everything, all the money that they've invested, and they've cleaned it up. It's not a place where teenagers loiter and just hang out anymore. So that's been a huge benefit. You know, on here we have number 15, government grants are dwindling, but we also put that as a strength that we've been very successful with grants. So it's a challenge from the standpoint of, you know, we have to recognize that there's less and less of those grants out there. But again, I have to compliment staff, especially when it comes to what we've done out there at the airport, on being able to get some of those grants. And one of the things that's interesting, and Keith, maybe you can speak to this, but in a lot of cases, the reason that SCLA is getting some of this money is because other areas and other airports aren't able to actually spend it. So the FAA or the federal government, for whatever reason, they award this money to other areas throughout the nation. They can't spend the money, so they go to the next best place, and we've got all kinds of areas we can spend the money on.
Yeah, the FAA likes to award based upon readiness to build, so we've actually taken some initial steps in being a little bit more proactive and going out and getting the design work done. And in a lot of cases, we've actually initiated design work on improvements using our operating revenues, knowing that they're grant eligible and can be reimbursable from a future grant, but just having design work done and being ready to actually go to construction is huge for them because they'd like to spend their money as soon as they get it. So just the readiness factor has gotten us competitive.
I think one of the challenges for us for the next several years is going to be that Yucca Bridge. More from the standpoint of our neighbors' needs than our needs.
And our needs, yeah.
We don't have a compelling need to build that bridge, but our neighbors do, and that creates a lot of pressure.
That's a great point.
And we've got, we have priorities, frankly, road priorities that just are higher up on the list than that bridge. But it still is an ongoing challenge with our friends and neighbors.
But it's not at the top of Victorville's priority list.
That's right.
Okay.
It's at the absolute top of Apple Valley.
It's continually being shoved to Victorville. We are continually being reminded that that is a high priority that we need to work on. But it's not a high priority internally. And it's external forces. And then all kinds of things emanate from that. Cooperation, caring for the valley, acting as a team and part of with the other communities, and on and on and on. So it cannot be ignored at all.
And it's a huge financial commitment.
It's very large. However, just a few years ago, that was 100% county obligation. So we know they're going to come through and help us.
Good thing we have a supervisor's representative here to hear that.
And we can fill you in on that if you're interested.
One of the things that we talked about a couple of years ago, and the council talked about in council meetings, and with the image of the city, that we needed to clean it up, make it look better, establish pride, not only from the city operations, but from the community at large. It seems like we've made a gain. But I was in the grocery store within the past week, and a lady came in with her house coat on and house slippers, and her kids in the pajamas, and shopped away. And I thought, I couldn't do that. I don't say I could do that. I don't know what causes people to do that. And yet we begin to see things like that. And I don't know if that's the new norm, and I'm just behind times, or it's a lack of pride. Pardon? Just
jump out of bed and go shopping.
So, but we saw the houses not being fixed up, and it spreads like a cancer down the streets. Landscaping no longer being taken care of. And then the houses continue the downward spiral. And then people walked away from it, and then it became rentals, and then we had people that had no disposable income. And it was a terrible downward spiral. I think that stopped. And there's a lot of different reasons. And one reason is a plus and a minus. One, the plus is that the housing costs have gone up. And it can get to the point that middle income can't afford the houses. On the other hand, you can't rent them enough to justify the rental rates because they can't pay the rental rates because there's low-income people. And so then you get homeowners, which is always a plus, over renters. And that's something that would take a lot of discussion on a lot of statistical data. But one of the things that we have noticed, even with our programs to no longer require you to water lawns and keep them green and so on, the neighborhoods are looking better just throughout the whole city. I do believe a lot of that has to do with the fact that the city voiced their concern, spoke about it publicly, backed it up with code enforcement, so that the people who live there were assured that we didn't abandon them. We care about this community, and we hope they care about the community. We have seen that change. That has been effective. We have to build on it again. We have to keep going.
You know, one of the things that came up in that brief discussion we had last month with our housing guys is that there isn't necessarily a direct connection between ownership and nice property and renters and bad property, that those connections aren't quite that linear. So I'm really thinking that a lot of this is because of code enforcement, whether it's an owned property or a rented property.
I think it's an unknown, but there's a good possibility that is it. That is the reason.
Code enforcement's had a big effect.
So I added neighborhoods looking better to the strengths and maintaining and building civic pride as an ongoing challenge for the city. Any other?
And that goes along with getting the people involved.
And getting people involved, yeah. Which is up.
Knowing that their opinions count. They can come to City Hall and talk to someone. We come to the council meetings to talk to someone. But it's terrible when individuals just simply don't care. I'd rather they complain than not care. Because if they care, you can get them involved to help the city carry out its goals, or overcome the challenges, or meet its whatever. You know, it's no different than there was a story in the newspaper several years ago. A crime was being committed, and so what did the people do that witnessed the crime? They closed their windows because everything had failed and they didn't care anymore, as opposed to somebody dialing 911. I think we went through that trough where people didn't care. And we have come through that where people do call and report things and want us to know that things are going on in the neighborhood. That is a form of community pride. They care about the neighborhood. So if you care about every neighborhood, the next thing you know, you care about the whole city.
And Laura, I think a lot of this is interrelated, so I would like to add a lack of job opportunities to the challenges. Because this community, quite frankly, I love it, but we have an over-reliance on commuter jobs, to be quite frank. So let's just be clear, this community does not sustain itself on employment here in this city. So that's a challenge. It's to me, it is what it is, and it's always been a value play. And I think things get mixed up, and people, you know, for example, items 6 and 8, I think, are starting to talk about this, but let's talk about 6 and 8. The median income for this community is, I believe, $45,000, somewhere around there, $45,000 to $50,000 median household income, and then the median price for a home here in Victorville is $190-something thousand. Again, for a starter community, for folks that are just starting families and whatnot, I mean, that's a great thing. It's a positive thing. But for others, it can be viewed negatively. And I don't view it negatively. It is what it is. So it's really hard to get your arms around the real numbers in this community as far as jobs and who's here and how many rentals we have. I've heard we've had a lot of rentals, somewhere around 45% of the housing stock are rentals. Again, is that a positive or negative? Do we have metrics that can talk to that? I'm not sure that we do have that. You know, and certainly as a city, what are our responsibilities when it comes to patrolling rental units and out-of-control absentee owners? But I think 6 and 8, I understand kind of what they're getting at. I just don't know that the city has a role in free market activity when it comes to type of housing, because the market is what it is. If we had look, I'd like to live in a gated community, quite frankly. I'd like to have a larger lot. Sure, okay, that's fine. But I need about a few more people that are willing to pay for that, and that's where we get hung up, is because there sure are a lot of people out there that really are attracted to the lower prices.
And so just a question of the city's role in addressing the home prices.
Well, I think in the last 20 years, we have evolved as a bedroom community. We just have. Whether we like that or not, I think that's what's happened. It's become it's one of the very inexpensive places to live in Southern California. So we've attracted folks who are looking for an inexpensive place to live.
If I might speak to Councilmember Negretti's comment as the lack of jobs, and perhaps to remind the council, many years ago, one of our responses to that recognition, and we've made a lot of progress over the years, certainly over the last 20 years in that regard, but one of our responses to that was the removal of number 11, redevelopment. Now, that is what it is, and it's gone. There is a byproduct that we're dealing with currently that still continues to be a massive challenge for us administratively, and that's how the state of California is administering the dissolution and the wind down. And we've had continuous arguments with Sacramento over that issue, to the point where I think administratively we're all of our arguments are falling on deaf ears. So either it's going to require a legal remedy or legislative remedy. So that's certainly a challenge that I think might be worth considering in response to that jobs component, because what we've been arguing about largely has been contracts that we've entered into that continue to be impaired and further impaired by actions of Sacramento regarding things that we've done over the years with VITA and the SCLA JPA.
Do you think that's impacted jobs?
I think it certainly impacts the ability. For example, we have a...
To attract new ones.
To continue to expand, correct.
So that it impacts the city's ability to expand and grow.
Correct.
Okay. So it's negatively.
And really at the base.
At the base. And that was, and I make that distinction because that was one of our biggest responses to that jobs component. Adding to that, though, unrelated to SCLA, there is a reinvent of redevelopment that certainly would be worth considering going forward in future for other areas of the city that could help address that lack of job opportunities.
There's significant interest in potentially new hangars at SCLA, that if redevelopment were still available, that could push those discussions over the top, but it's just not. It's interesting to me. I don't know what it means exactly, but I think we all recognize that we're a bedroom community. 60-some% of our residents commute down the hill, and that yet another challenge of ours that we've identified is that business owners, and I'm assuming that would extend to probably management, higher level within businesses in Victorville, are commuting into Victorville from out the valley and other areas as well. I just find that interesting.
Yeah.
We're both a bedroom community, but we're also a destination for commuters as well from the Victor Valley.
Yeah, you talk about a lot of business owners living in Apple Valley or Spring Valley Lake, but probably just as many live down the hill. They drive up, they commute up the hill when they come up here. You know, there are some that come to mind right off the top of my head. So, you know, there's also that dynamic. You've got a lot of people commuting the other way, coming into the Victor Valley to work, whether they be business owners or just people working in those businesses.
Well, let's face it, in Southern California, commuting to work is just a way of life. And
Yeah.
there's nothing we're going to do to change that. In fact, if we tripled the number of jobs we had in the desert, we'd probably just attract more and more.
Well, interestingly enough, I mean, we go back to the furniture manufacturer out at SCLA. And when they first started, they were actually busing or van pulling people in from down the hill because they couldn't find them up here. Yeah, you know, we created a situation where all these jobs could be created, but when they went to look for the labor force, as much as we had a labor force here to work, the people that were actually qualified to do the jobs weren't here. They were down the hill. So they were, you know, shuttling them in on a daily basis. I don't know. A lot of those people, I think, have moved here since then, bought homes, and that's a good thing. But at the end of the day, that's one of those things that, you know, we're always going to have to deal with, and that's not like hugely
What does that say about our
high-skilled
labor force?
Well, that wasn't sort of just general labor. That was specifically people working with fabric, sewing the furniture, the final furniture pieces together. That's the piece that was missing. Just general labor we have in abundance. This is a specific skill that we simply have never had in the high desert, so we didn't have, other than people that were otherwise commuting to similar jobs down the hill. We just didn't have a big labor pool for seamstresses or whatever they're called when it's furniture.
Yeah.
So any other key challenges? This last one, you said business owners and employees also did not only commuting downhill, but also commuting into Victorville, and that you see pros and cons of that. So it might be on the strengths also.
One of the challenges that I see that comes around quite often is a attitude from folks that have either lived here for a long time or don't want to see growth. I think it's a challenge because growth is coming. All those empty lots that you see out there, you know, there's a plan for that. What we haven't had is the population or jobs or rooftops or whatever it happens, but as they begin to get filled in, I don't know. I don't know what the projections are. We could double as a city in size, add another in 20
Almost
years.
triple. I mean, at build-out, we're almost triple our size.
And I'm not saying it's going to happen overnight. Certainly, we want to monitor that and encourage smart growth. But growth is coming. But for people to have a NIMBY attitude, or you know, we're trying to recruit people. We're trying to recruit companies. We're saying that we have affordable land, and your money goes farther than it does in other areas. But then we don't want the traffic that goes along with it. So I think that's a bit of a contradiction that I'm seeing all the time. And in some communities it's worse than ours, but...
So if I said support for growth is uneven, sort of the NIMBY, but growth is inevitable, so we need to plan for it.
Well, and I know we have
One of
some
the
planning
issues-
commissioners here.
Our challenge is the infrastructure.
One of the issues that's connected to that are the economics of the city that connect to all that growth and development. The city has got to be able to generate enough revenue from property tax and sales tax to provide the services that those new residents need. I mean, that's just, and the League of Cities has done studies on this, and there's a lot of information out there about what that development has to be like, the values, price ranges, and so on.
Fiscalization of land use. I did.
So both the infrastructure and the economics needed to support growth.
Because it takes police, fire, roads, streets, lights, all that stuff.
Laura, I just have one more challenge too.
Yeah.
A shortage of medical services.
Okay.
I know
That's
quite
a
a bit
good
of
one.
folks aren't even full-time up here. They commute 2 or 3 days and they don't, medical services.
Okay.
And I think you can add to that too, retirement community kind of living facilities.
Okay, so a shortage of retirement facilities.
I think so.
Okay.
Not that I care about that.
You're never retiring.
We never will.
Retirement facilities, truck camper.
So does that capture what you see as the key challenges? Okay. It's more, it's
Now,
bigger
we're
more?
okay with the parks as far as I can see. I don't think we need any more parks. I think we're okay with that.
Except skate parks,
We're getting there.
which is in,
Yeah, we might actually have a solution for that.
Typically, what I see in other communities, though, is as they grow, then, of course, they do need parks and all the other services that you just talked about. So, what you're
They
saying
all
right
go
now,
hand in
for the
hand.
community.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, this was all designed to get all your thoughts out and understand each other's perspectives as a lead-in to looking at priorities. So I just handed out what the council 2 years ago created, which was, and let me just kind of refresh how you all, those that were here, created that. You envisioned, an extremely successful community 3 years from now. Now, this was back in 2014, so that made it 2017. And what would be in place for that to be, for the city to be extremely successful. And so you said a safe community, higher value residential, public support and trust, better and higher paying jobs related to economic development, prettier, cleaner community with pride of ownership, improved roads, and financial strength as a city, balanced budget and budget reserves. So again, these are directional, and then you created, or the council then created objectives more specific to accomplish those. And some of those objectives might leverage several of the goals. And again, these aren't necessarily in priority order, but this is what was developed for 2017, 2 years ago. So given how you see things right now, what's been accomplished, the strengths and the challenges, we just want for you to have a discussion of, do those still look like the right priorities? And again, this would be for this next year, and then we can look at the specific objectives for how to accomplish those.
Well, Laura, the second, fourth, and fifth bullet point, again, what the city can do to influence those, I'm sure that, I think there's a better way to phrase this.
Okay.
For example, the second one, you might have a diversity of residential offerings, that type of thing, that you could get at to what you're trying to say, but I don't know that the city can influence free market forces. The fourth bullet point, again, sure, we'd like higher paying jobs, but that's not necessarily our decision. That would depend on job creators and obviously encouraging those job creators. Maybe it's phraseology, but, and then prettier, a cleaner community I can get behind, but prettier, with pride of ownership. People told me before, what are you going to do about pride of ownership? Well, I have pride of ownership. I'd like everyone else to feel the same way, but we have problem issues, but we also have code enforcement. So I think we are getting at some of these things where we can as a city. I just don't know that pride of ownership is something that we can leverage our resources, although we can use code enforcement to kind of get at some of this. So I think just the wording.
of course, there are cities where you can see and feel the pride of ownership the minute you cross the boundary, and others where you can tell that there just isn't much. And I don't know if that is something the city can influence. A lot better.
So, I think it is important to say, are these things that you believe are completely within your control, or are
No.
something you are trying to influence through your actions? And this is really, your vision of what the city you would like to have. And so, I could capture other descriptions or how you would like to word this, or maybe you'd like to combine some of these. And so let's just have a conversation and figure out the best way to state what it is that you'd like to see.
I think safety stays at the top of the list. It just has to. Public safety is our number one. At least in my mind it is.
Is everyone good with that staying on the list? Okay.
Yeah, improved roads, financial strength, all those things should stay.
Okay.
Better and higher paying jobs, I think that should continue to be there. As far as rewarding those others, I have no issue with that. I just, I think we need to have some tie-in there as to what we're hoping to accomplish when it comes to housing. But I have no issue with changing how we word that.
I do agree that you could change the wording on number 2 rather than higher value. It sounds like we're making a plea to the state legislature to do with Prop 13.
Well, we've got all the low and moderate value residential that we need.
Well, but we can't get rid of it by law. We don't want to get rid of it for those workers. And so the diversity, I think was the word here used, probably becomes an important word to use in that. Diversity of housing cost.
Housing options, maybe?
Pardon?
Diversity of housing options?
Something like that. Because we have an awful lot, but very low and moderate. We have a lot of middle-income neighborhoods. We don't have the upper-income neighborhoods that other cities may have. One of the problems that we've tried to overcome for years, you have a businessman come to town, he builds the building, and he moves to another community. And how do you keep that individual in the community? Well, you're not going to keep him in the community unless there's other housing. Peer pressure will bring them here. And so the diversity becomes an important word in that respect, the diversity of housing costs, housing developments. I see a change for that. I think that's good.
Well, I agree. I think once you actually have a community that would attract somebody that would want to live here, you're talking about retail and restaurant options that currently probably don't exist for someone to want to be here. Now, if you have a higher residential community, obviously the family or household income is going to be higher, and they're going to have different tastes than what currently exists. That's why I don't necessarily see it as a negative. I'm just, we're going to get a diversity as we continue to grow of different offerings. But right now, we don't have certain things, and that, again, that's not a negative. I know BJ's and Krispy Kreme, bring it on. We're going to continue to improve there. I just think we're going to get there. I just don't know if we can claim to have a higher value residential offering right now within the city that I know that speaks to, okay, $500,000 plus homes, executive type folks that live there. I think it's a stretch. I mean, I know some of them, and they probably wouldn't consider that offhand right off the top of their head.
So are you good with diversity of housing options? That speaks to what you're really looking at? Is that?
Well, I don't know that we have that now. We have some diversity. What we don't have is the high income, the higher value housing. That's the one piece of diversity that we don't have very much of. We have some, but we don't have much of it. So if we're not interested in higher value residential, then we'll just stay on the path that we're on.
So would you think that if you don't have that, then you're not diverse?
But I don't know how you create it. Cities can't create it. I mean, that
Right.
part is
Right.
absolutely right. We can't create a
Yeah.
housing market. That's just beyond our ability.
Right.
And we can make it impossible to build by creating outrageous fees and all that kind of stuff, so that the only way you can build is if you're on a real high, and I don't think anyone has an appetite for that. So other than a nice lofty objective, I'm not sure it's...
Well, it's going to go with household income and creating jobs that pay. I mean, the largest obstacle that this city has to overcome is the very fact we're located in California. Just a matter of fact, it's hard to do business here. And so when we're trying to convince commercial or industrial to locate here, we have to do a great selling job just to get them to come here. So it's a major victory when we get a large company to come here, because they'd much rather go to Arizona or Nevada or any place except California. I don't know why we don't openly discuss that more, except that it's a discussion that's not a damn thing we can do about it. And so we just learn to live with it. But so we've had some major victories in Victorville in the last couple of years. So I don't know, maybe we need to take the time to write a letter to those individuals thanking them for creating the jobs and welcoming them and doing something just to let them know that we don't accept that as a matter of fact, that we really do appreciate it when they do create those jobs. Because on our list of priorities, jobs and higher paying jobs is always there.
So going back to, and again, these are sort of the high-level goals, and then we'll get into the specifics. Would you like to just remove the one that says higher value residential? Or do you want to say support for a
You
diverse?
can say encourage a diversity of residential offerings. I don't.
How does that sound to everyone? Encourage.
Well, that's about all we can do.
Or
because it's a market.
diversity of housing
I mean,
options? Or-
yeah. I mean, there's a reality. We've got the Gateway Specific Plan, which is up and around Quartzsite Mountain, and that's master planned. It will have those higher end residential homes. But that was a unique situation where you took a swath of land which was completely untouched, and you kind of determined your own destiny by putting there what you wanted. Unlike a lot of the other areas of the city of Victorville, we don't have that opportunity to do because they were already zoned, for whatever reason. So, but I think there's an opportunity to get some of the housing that we're talking about.
So I think what I heard from you is safe community, improved roads, financial strength as a city, and I'll write the rest of it in. The public support and trust, those are all felt solid with those. This encouraged diversity of housing options. And then you had the better and higher paying jobs related to economic development and the prettier, cleaner community with pride of ownership. Do you still see those as desired? And again, think of these as desired outcomes, not what you have to do, but what you're trying to end up with, because then what you do is what's in the objectives.
I think what I'm looking at when I see that one is something more along the lines of promoting a prosperous business environment, which would hopefully take care of that. Maybe more of an umbrella language type thing, but however you want to word it. Promote a prosperous business environment.
What's that? What's that mean?
Instead of, specifically us saying that we want higher paying jobs, which of course we do, it's just, that's not something that we're not creating those jobs. So we can encourage that environment.
How does that look to you, that would cover the better and higher paying jobs? Or does someone else have other language they'd like to?
Well, I'm fine with that language. When we get into the respect to that, I think we need to drill down.
Yes.
The city has
What
been
would
so successful in the past in attracting the Dr. Pepper Snapples, the Boeings, the leading edges, and we need to get back to doing that again. I know we've kind of been gun shy because of the SEC and the recession and all of that, but quite frankly, we've got tools in our toolbox that no other city up here has. I mean, when you talk about our water department, our VMUS and electricity and things that we can do specifically out at SCLA, we've got things that we can do to attract business even without redevelopment, and we need to get back to doing that, in my opinion.
So that's when we drill down into the objectives.
I'm fine with that language.
Any
Or
other?
just for the last one there, because I heard from 2 council members who talked about wanting to retain something about higher paying jobs. Maybe just adding that to promote a prosperous business environment to attract higher paying jobs.
Yeah, that would, I think.
That one.
That kind of covers kind of both sides of that
Yeah.
discussion.
I mean, honestly, from coming out of this, and hopefully whatever happened last time this happened, is that there's a sense of common and shared goals. And I think as a council, we actually believe that and expect that. So as a city, we need to all, take it in and execute that, so that when a city, when a potential new business owner comes in and talks to Jim or Ryan or Gloria or Jim or myself, that vision that we have is executed, and that person feels valued and doesn't go down the street to Hesperia or Apple Valley. They know that we all believe in this city about that.
There's a really, you should be able to use these for decision making. You can ask yourself a question, well, is that going to promote a prosperous business environment to attract higher paying jobs, or is that decision going to make us a more safe community, or is this going to increase the city's financial strength? These should be usable, so you kind of lay them over decisions that you're making. So, and I know you have to weigh so many different options, but these should be very practical and usable. There's one that I'm not sure what you want to do. The prettier, cleaner community with pride of ownership.
I just don't like prettier.
Prettier.
Yeah.
What? I don't like that word. Prettier was your word.
I don't think it was.
But is there
We'll
something?
go pull the recording. Oh, wait a minute.
Maybe it was Angela's word.
Destroyed.
It got deleted.
Is that a necessity, or do you want to say something with regard to?
I don't know, I don't have a word for it, but we're looking for well-maintained.
Well-maintained.
Something, but
A well-maintained city.
There you go.
Goes with the objective of code enforcement, really.
With pride of ownership.
Okay.
Yeah. That,
You did have a word for it.
I guess I did.
No, it's
That's 2 words.
Be hyphenated.
no, that looks very good.
Of course, we could have been talking about grass in every single street median 2 years ago, and now we can't even do that.
Right.
Yeah.
No.
I know, that's hard.
Well, hey, words of the governor, no matter how much it rains, the drought isn't over.
It's still raining out there.
I don't know what that means, but
Okay, so how do those look as your goals?
I have one more that I'd like to just ask the council to consider, is just to actually state that one of our goals is to ensure city services are cost-effective and responsive. Which, here we have financial strength as a city. I want to make sure that we can actually have something to measure when it comes to that, and I'm not sure, balanced budget gets to it, but.
And so would you see that as one of the goals or one of the specific objectives? And I'm not sure. So,
One of the goals.
so responsive and cost-effective city services? How's that sound to everyone?
Well, obviously, how can you not be in favor of that? I think we all are.
Yeah. So you're good with that?
well, I'm absolutely in favor of it. I'm absolutely better police and fire, but you can't have 100% of the general fund on police and fire. So
Yeah.
to do it right, to ensure this community is safe, you would spend 100% of the general fund. But if you did, you'd drop off a whole bunch of other services that we have to have. And the public doesn't see that kind of discussion, and they hold us accountable. But that really takes a lot of time with the council and the staff trying to figure out that balance. So you can't disagree with it. In fact, I agree with it. I think the fact that it's cost-effective is, in fact, a key word because they're services that we cannot drop. And to be cost-effective, we have to take money away from police and fire sometimes. And yet we don't want to ever be in a position to say we are withholding funding for police and fire public safety, because that's a must. But I don't know that we've ever gone through that cost-effective evaluation and stretched the numbers to see in our budgetary just deliberations. I don't think we have.
So,
I mean,
so I think what I'm
I
hearing
think
you
it's a
say
good one. It's an excellent
is the combination of
exercise.
responsive and cost-effective is where you'll see the balance. So one more then was added, responsive and cost-effective city services. And so I think this would be a great point for a break. And
No,
then-
I'm just getting into this. No.
And then we'll come back and look at specific objectives for what's been accomplished on the objectives that were set 2 years ago, and then what you see as specific objectives that would, and you don't necessarily need to put specific objectives under each of these. Some of the greatest objectives are those that might leverage several of these at one time. So we can come back and look at these and say, what should the objectives be for the coming year? So how about 15 minutes? 15 minutes?
15 minutes.
All right. Back in 15.
You call? Go. Oh, I'm okay, go ahead. What's that?
The promptness, the responsiveness, probably more in planning than in other areas, but not exclusively planning.
So I think when we get into the objectives, that's when you can talk about any specific objectives, but this is what you'd like to end up with.
Yeah, I think that's a
So are
good
you
idea.
still comfortable with that as an objective? Any others that, you know, as you've had a chance to noodle on them over the break, any others that you suggest adjustments
Had a
to?
chance to what?
Noodle.
Noodle.
In your brain.
That's what this is, you know.
Think about.
Think about it, yeah.
Noodle on it.
Noodle, I can write noodle all the time.
But maybe for the
I thought that was the other, there was an understanding.
for the fourth bullet, encourage
For the
diversity
diversity of housing.
And I don't know if this is objective, but we could use.
And I'm going to get everybody back. All right, so on this one,
Yeah, I don't know if we want to get to it in objectives and be more specific, but maybe other things like high-quality homes or affordable or senior housing as well is something that we could attach to that, not just the diversity. I mean, I don't know if the council wants to.
so I'm not sure if this is yours. The specific types may be something you do in the objectives,
Okay.
but what about the concept of high quality or?
Actually, I think we certainly want to encourage that, or as one of our goals, we don't want low
Right.
quality.
So just after of, add high quality housing options?
Affordable, high quality, or senior, or what, we can get into it, or however you want to.
Affordable and high quality, or affordable, comma, high quality?
Affordable and high quality, but we have low-income folks, so.
I think that's more of an objective personally. I mean, when you say diversity, all those things would fall under diversity. So when you get into the objectives, you can talk about having high quality,
Specific.
affordable, senior housing.
Is
all
that,
those.
okay.
Yeah, I think that's what we envision it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, great. So, let's look at what's been accomplished over the last 2 years with regard to the goals that were established 2 years ago. So I think, Doug, you were going to go through.
Yeah, I'll go through those. So as a follow-up to the January meeting, department heads met in sort of the half-day mini retreat at a local restaurant to kind of go through, geez, 7 items and come up with an action plan that was presented to council April 1st of 2014 and adopted at that time. So I was literally taking notes for myself to be able to present, and I thought, well, why not just go ahead and put them into a memorandum so that everyone has them in writing, rather than you listening to me struggle speaking with my braces giving me fits today. But overall, we've, I think, done a pretty good job of either completing or at least addressing most of the items that are on the list. Looking at safer community items, we are adding deputies. Clearly there's a need to add more, and we will continue to do that. Animal control, we did not add positions, but at this time 2 years ago, just based on our staff at the time, we really were very limited. We had 4 positions, but we did not have 4 full-time bodies in them, I'll say, because of some medical issues and other things. So at this point, we do have 4 full-time animal control officers. We have added a vehicle. The update to code changes for animal control is something that I've reviewed what I believe to be a final draft. And that's being reviewed by legal counsel now, so that should be coming back very soon. We had a discussion regarding prohibiting uses such as liquor stores, bars, and pawn shops 2 years ago. That was completed in October 2014 by heavily modifying the alcohol ordinance, something that I know there's been some discussion about perhaps relaxing a little bit at this point. And then under other code restrictions, which some of this speaks to the previous item, in August of last year, the council prohibited gold exchange, hydroponics, internet cafes, money service, check cashing, pawn shops, and smoking shops, smoke shops and lounges. Any new ones, it's effectively saying that we have enough of these offerings, and there is at least a significant portion of our community who views these as potentially negative image-wise. So that change was made. We had, regarding higher value residential, we called it then, formed a focus group with the business, with the building industry, as well as members of the public. And there was 2 significant changes that were made regarding design standards for single-family homes, and then ultimately came out just late last year with a change to encourage wider lots. Both of those had support from the building industry because of the focus group activity. Public support and trust. We've met with the Daily Press. We have had several meetings, actually, but the specific one was completed shortly after the action plan. We have hired a public information officer. She started in October of last year. Back 2 years ago, we talked about the traffic tuner column, and actually that column is no longer appearing in the newspaper. So we nor is Sean with the city anymore. But if the newspaper is interested in bringing something like that back, we would certainly cooperate on those issues. Upgrading the website with an interface app. We've done some of this. I talked earlier about the new transparency website, OpenGov, which was implemented in September of last year. We have the new Open Data Project that's going to further that goal. The SCLA Economic Development website was updated in January of this year, last year, about a year ago. So that's complete. The city's website software has been updated, but the actual homepage and sort of the tree of pages has not. Something we would very much like to get to, as the budget allows for that. We have begun working on an app for online reporting of issues to the city. InterGov was approved just a few months ago. It's a very robust online permitting system, but it also has a lot of other features, one of which is this app that was kind of spoken about a couple of years ago. We're about a year away from implementation of that, so we're well on our way there. Keeping in mind these were 3-year goals and we're 2 years in. better and higher paying jobs. Mr. Metzler and his staff, as well as myself and other staff, have attended conferences. So we have done a good job on some, and others we haven't reported back on exact activities. So something that I had forgotten about, to be honest, until I started putting these notes together. So we'll make sure we get more regular about providing updates to the council whenever we do some sort of business travel on what any potential updates may be there. One of my own goals that I had added was still hasn't been accomplished yet, but that's to meet with the university presidents from Cal State San Bernardino, UCR, and Cal Poly Pomona, trying to encourage them to invest in a satellite campus here in Victorville. I've done a little bit of outreach. It's been unsuccessful so far, so we're kind of doing some data, trying to get some data on their number of students who are from the Victor Valley, so that I can present a more compelling case to them when I finally do get a chance to have that meeting. So after our first sort of questions were answered politely but didn't really result in what we were looking for, I thought, well, let's do a little bit more detailed work to try to attract those meetings. So the Prettier Cleaner Community Pride of Ownership. The first one, additional graffiti cleanup crews and 2 rear-loaded trucks dedicated to cleanup, has not occurred yet. It's in progress. Trying to work that into the existing trash rates to fund those, at least the rear-loaded. The graffiti cleanup crew, I think, has been effective. We have not added to it, but I think there's been a reduction, at least in visible graffiti. It doesn't mean that graffiti isn't happening, but I think that we continue to do a pretty good job of getting to it when it does happen. Code enforcement, we've made significant gains, as we've talked about, with proactive residential code enforcement, proactive commercial enforcement, which actually occurred around the same time as the strategic planning 2 years ago. And then code enforcement did the upgrade, which was discussed, to an iPad system. Improved roads. We had a major project, as you all know, on the west side of Bear Valley Road. We are in the design stages on the east side of Bear Valley Road to replace all of the wavy asphalt with concrete. That would quite likely be under construction now, but our neighbor to the south, Hesperia, is also interested in doing that with their side of the road. So we've kind of slowed it down a little bit so that we do sort of one project and do it right. We also did the prioritization that we've talked about. You can see the exact date stand. It's very fresh in your minds, I'm sure, but that Bear Valley Road is the first piece, and then the Mesa Road, followed by Amethyst, Industrial, and Silica. Following that, and we've already been in discussions with the city engineer about most likely the next road project would be Village Drive.
Would you explain the return of Measure I maintenance money?
Sure. The Mesa and Nisqually interchange had a cost of $21 million associated with it for the city. We didn't have that money available. In fact, at the time we thought it was going to be $30 million. We had about $10 million available, and we entered into an agreement with Sandbag to borrow $11 million from our future Measure I maintenance money, which is about $4 million a year. What they did was they withheld that $4 million a year until they had completely collected the $11 million we had borrowed. We actually ended up paying off a piece of that early. So now we are back to getting $4 million a year for road maintenance, which is why we are able to do these major road projects. In addition to that, that $11 million by law, Measure I, is required to come from new development. So as we have new development that pays road impact fees, that amount of money annually is $500,000 to maybe $1 million, maybe a little bit over on a good year. That money comes to us, and in July of each year, we send that money to Sandbag, and it comes back to us as a repayment of that Measure I loan. So say we have $4 million for Measure I maintenance, we have another $1 million in road impact fees. That eventually comes back within 30 days as more maintenance money. So effectively, we went from having 0 Measure I maintenance dollars annually to anywhere from $4 to $5 million. So that was something that was identified as coming up 2 years ago, and now here we are 2 years later, and it has happened, and we were able to actually cause that to happen a little bit earlier than we expected. Financial strength as a city was and is still a priority. As identified, we're there. The only real objective that we had here was, as we grow out of the recession, was to start looking at reserves on sort of a fund-by-fund or a government agency-by-agency basis. As you know, this is not one big city. We have the city, we have the water district, which is a separate legal entity, we have the airport, we have several others that are separate legal entities that all have different funding cycles. Something like the water district, the majority of their funding, it comes through rates in very similar manner, month by month. People pay the water bills, whereas the city, although sales tax is relatively regular, property tax comes twice a year. So the need for reserves is different for those two agencies. So one of the things we would still like to do is look at historic declines and the impact of those funds on a fund-by-fund basis to figure out exactly what should the reserve level be based on the funding needs on a sort of ongoing basis. So something that we got delayed a little bit because our Chief Financial Officer retired about a year ago. We have delayed that recruitment largely because of the SEC case. Although we're very confident and a favorable outcome in that case, somebody looking at Chief Financial Officer position may be discouraged from applying because of that unknown. So we want to wait until that is behind us, which, cross our fingers, will be soon, so that we can recruit that position and have that sort of highest financial level leadership position filled to assist us with that assessment. That is everything.
Are you doing interfund borrowing to help deal with those rises and falls?
On an annual basis, yes. It just happens naturally.
But nothing carries over to the next year. It's all
carries over. Anything that's going to carry over to future fiscal years, we would bring forward to the council. Our diversity from a funding standpoint actually helps us not need as high a level of reserve, although it would still be prudent. If we were only the general fund, which doesn't happen, but just for supposition's sake, if we were only the general fund, we would have a minimum reserve of 30%, because by the time December comes, we are at roughly 50% in expenditures, but only about 20% in revenues in the general fund. That just happens every single year. And we get a big push in January, December, but it comes to us in January from property tax, and then the same cycle sort of happens again until we get the May property tax money.
So by being able to borrow from other funds, water or wherever,
right,
we're able to avoid maintaining higher reserves.
Yes, and avoid any sort of temporary bond measures that some other cities do have to do, revenue anticipation bonds for a 6-month period or maybe an 8-month period.
Doug, just going back to Bear Valley Road and the project that's contemplated, you spoke about us partnering with Hesperia so that they can do their side. I just want to make sure that that doesn't hold up our project moving forward in spring of this year. That's always been the plan.
Yes.
And quite frankly, if it's going to be another 6 months, which puts us into winter, and then we have to wait till 2017, I don't want to wait for Hesperia. No. I want to go forward with our project, regardless if they're not ready.
The current schedule would have us completing that project as well as completing La Mesa in this calendar year, in 2016.
Is that the on-ramp project?
No, this is from, what is it, Balsam to
Yeah,
Mariposa,
Balsam,
or all the way over?
to Amargosa.
Yeah.
A large portion of that
It's going to be
is
concrete.
going to be concrete. What you have is,
Over the bridge.
Yeah.
you have the semi-trucks in the right two lanes that just the weight and the stopping or stoplight just increases the foot-pound of pressure on those roadways, and they just can't take it. So
And every time they start up, they
yeah,
just dig
starting
it.
and stopping, exactly.
Question on the one about better high-paying jobs. I know we've added businesses over the last 2 years. I know things have come online at the base. Is there a way to quantify on some kind of regular basis the number of jobs that have been added? Many people have said we have completely replaced the jobs that were lost as a result of closing the air base.
I heard that.
I've heard it. I haven't seen it quantified. I don't know if it could be quantified.
Yeah, I think the number of jobs we can, to the extent businesses are willing to tell us.
Can you
They
identify
typically
the
have
new businesses that have been
Yeah,
added?
we can do that. In the past, we've been asked about, high-paying versus low-paying, and that's information that businesses have never shared.
You just don't have that.
Yeah, they have no desire in sharing that.
Other than the Federal Bureau of Prisons, they'll tell you.
Yeah.
It's the federal government.
I don't know the last time that we've done it, but we've had staff call those that we can easily identify, certainly those at SDLA. We've
I think
actually
that'd be a
called
way to
out.
measure whether we've accomplished anything or not.
Yeah.
Well, any new business that applies for a business license and that hires employees has to indicate how many employees they have, and these are the new businesses.
Do the ones that go out of business notify us and cancel their business license?
Not typically.
They
simply don't renew.
Don't renew.
They just don't renew.
So I'll just keep a parking lot of things like that that aren't specific objectives, but that you want to be sure to capture.
Okay.
So that's the update on the objectives from 2 years ago. So now it's time to look at what you want as your objectives for 2016. So I'm wondering if a good place to start would be to look at the 2014-15 objectives and say, are there any here that you want to keep on the list? And then we'll identify, are there others that you want to add? So,
The first one, I want to ask a question. We had 2 years ago increased code enforcement. The objective now is to maintain an adequate code enforcement team.
Yes.
We don't want to increase, but we don't want to lose anybody, right?
I think that would be accurate. I mean, it's up to the council.
Do we need to increase it?
I didn't think so, but I'm not sure. That was kind of the question.
I'm sure if you ask the code enforcement manager, he'd take more officers, but I think we have a plan in place to be able to complete the sweeps that we want to do with the number of officers we have now.
But to maintain an adequate code enforcement crew could mean adding. But it's an assurance to the community that we're not, now that we've had code enforcement and we've done the sweeps, we're going to stop. I think it becomes important that remains an objective, that we maintain that code enforcement team.
Is that help to the police?
Yes, absolutely.
And
It's
they
help
would
to the police,
advise.
but it's also help to that sort of appearance of a safe community.
Yeah.
One thing that I did kind of skip over in my overview of this is those sweeps. We're about 10% complete on those to date with the entire city. We started in the north end of the city and we're sort of headed south. So they have taken a little bit longer than we anticipated, mostly because of feedback from the first sweeps that we did. We have revised our documents and our notification process to make it more clear that that first piece of paper that maybe they got on their door or got handed was simply educational, informational, and not a citation. So we've backed up a little bit to make sure that we're enforcing codes, but doing so in a way that's encouraging compliance and not just trying to write a bunch of citations.
But we have a long way to go.
We do.
That's why I think that to maintain that.
So personally, we do have 80?
What's that?
We have 80? deputies?
No, we have, at this point, I believe we have 70?
70.
70? Yeah, 70 bloodhounds who will be starting hopefully in a month or two.
So do you want it to say maintain adequate code enforcement or maintain proactive code enforcement, or what? How do you want this worded?
I just wanted to give an assurance for people who watch that we're not dropping it, because we've had success, and we've got a long way to go, and that's continuing to be one of our that's one of our objectives. So however the wording,
Adequate is good.
I like adequate because that allows us to increase when we need to.
Yeah, okay, all right.
Proactive is just one of those words that is just too vague for my
Yeah.
case myself.
Okay, sounds good. Let's just go down the list. Increase law enforcement staffing to support programs.
What does that mean, to support programs? Does anybody remember?
Yeah, I would just take out to support programs and
Yeah.
just leave increase.
to increase law enforcement staffing?
Yeah.
At the time, it was
Okay.
things like gang programs and
Yeah.
homeless outreach.
Yeah.
Is
programs.
it still on our plan to increase staff?
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know what three is. Anybody know what that was?
It was related to number 4. It was to look at far out areas in the city and come up with strategies on how we could better plan for them and better produce housing, do commercial and that, instead of letting them hopscotch out there on the ground. We spent the first 2 years more on number 4, so we haven't worked on that one at all. And we're still working on specific plans with QDs with relationships to number 4, so we're not ready to consider number 3.
Why don't we drop the word "and implement"? Why don't we just
Develop a plan goes.
develop a planned growth strategy? I'm not sure we want to be implementing something like that if we don't even know what it is.
Well, and you're thinking these are one-year objectives, so
Yeah.
this year would be develop a
They may not even get
A
strategy.
good reminder, I mean, this really is, at this point, the third year of the 3-year plan, so.
We've done 4.
And 4, implement the higher neighborhood design and development standards, so you're saying that can come off.
I'm not sure there's a reason to keep it on, is there?
We're still working on specific plans and PUDs in relationship to that, but that's the last.
So you're in implementation phase?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so that one can come off?
I think it can.
Okay. You all good with that?
Yeah. Doug, have we done 5, or we still need to do more on that? Or?
No, we still need to do 5.
Okay.
Yeah, we do. I don't want to say that it'll be done by this time next year, to be honest.
Well, because you're looking, what you were talking about earlier is a fund by fund
Right.
versus just an overall reserve.
Right,
We've
right.
adopted a reserve
We have a
policy.
reserve policy.
Yeah.
It's sort of the blanket reserve policy
Yeah.
that really needs to be more detailed.
But like, when it comes to the water district or the airport, we want to get more specific as to
Right.
those operations versus just an overall
Yes.
And
percentage.
of course, part of the problem there is that we don't have a right to charge people more than it costs us to deliver that service. So building up a reserve in water to cover the city isn't an acceptable strategy.
No, and we haven't done that,
No,
to be clear.
no, we haven't. But we're sort of using those reserves for short-term borrowing purposes as a way to not.
Yeah, just across the board.
Yeah.
So you're saying identify the level of financial reserves the city needs to mitigate any future financial downturn. So that needs to be accomplished this year.
You know, I would add, and other agencies.
The city and other agencies
Yeah,
need.
and its agencies or something like that.
Yeah.
'Cause it really is
more than just the city.
Just the city.
Okay. So, 6, diversify city revenue sources, both restricted and unrestricted.
How do you do that, Doug?
Yeah, that's a great objective. I don't know how to word it.
How on earth do we actually do that?
It's a great objective, though.
It
Well,
really
it is, yeah. I mean, I think,
Leasing is one way of doing it. VMOOS is a way of doing it.
I think what was talked about isn't really diversifying the sources so much as diversifying, our business attraction so that the existing sources increase. Because I don't know how to diversify our funding sources. It's
No.
kind of set by law.
It is.
Right, yeah. I don't know that that needs to be
Without
there.
getting the city
Take that
into
one
more
out.
of an entrepreneurial position, which I would not recommend. I think we tried
You
that.
don't want to do that?
So is it really more looking at 7 or some form of 7, increase
Yeah, I think
economic
6 can go away.
development?
Yeah, 2 or 6.
And how does that language look? Increase economic development through the development and implementation of an economic development plan.
It's a lot of
That's a lot of
development.
development.
Sure is.
A lot of developments in one
Yeah, I
sentence.
know, I was looking at that too. How might we say that differently?
They just have increased economic
Economic
development.
Yeah, take out all the rest of that, but we need to get back to doing that, like I talked about earlier.
And when we say economic development, we're talking about business promotion, right?
And attraction, yeah.
So increase economic development opportunities. God, made that up.
Opportunities.
And did you want to add the language and business
Do we want to
promotion?
talk, do we want to be specific about business attraction and
Business
promotion,
attraction and
anything like that?
promotion? Or including business attraction and promotion, or
It's kind of-
is that understood?
It's understood.
Yeah, that's
It's understood.
That's what economic development is. Okay.
It's sort of one of those things that is always going to be on the list.
Yeah.
You got public safety, you got roads, and you got economic development.
Well, and Doug, I mean, I know Keith and you have been doing some of that stuff. I don't know that you always share it with the council, but that may be part of what we do in the next year is you share it more with the council, what you're doing, and involve us where necessary.
Yeah.
I know that we don't want to get back into the days of yesteryear where you had council members negotiating deals. We don't want to necessarily do that, but where we can help facilitate and help staff attract those type of users or jobs or help, businesses grow locally, we ought to be part of it.
Yeah, and we can do a better job of more regularly, at least reporting back our activities. It's tough. I mean, I'll use Opportunity High Desert as an example. We sort of annually or maybe semi-annually get asked, okay, what did OHC do? What business did you attract because you went to the trade show in Vegas or San Diego and sealed the deal? And unfortunately, as maybe as sexy and easy as that may sound, it's really not that simple.
It doesn't work that way.
The whole business attraction process takes years and years. It's making sure that we have the staff in place that when they finally submit permits, those are handled appropriately. It's reaching out to them with information over and over, and so we can't always point to a specific activity or trade show or one simple thing that we did and sort of give credit to that activity. So,
from my perspective, I think what I would hope to accomplish through this objective is in 2 years from now, we could announce that we've secured another beverage facility next to Dr. Pepper Snapple that can utilize our wastewater treatment plant for the same purposes that they use it for. That's what we ought to be looking to accomplish.
yes.
In the next-
Becoming kind of a niche.
Well, it is a niche. It's something that we've obviously, because they're there, we have the ability to attract same-like users, right? So we ought to go out and find those users that are looking to relocate. And, I mean, how many jobs do we have at Dr. Pepper Snapple? 120 or more than that?
No, it was
Two?
more than that the last time
Two?
we checked.
2 something? Yeah, and some very high-paying jobs out there. I mean, they've got chemists on staff, and that's a great facility if you haven't taken a tour of it. So we need to be, and I think that would be my hope or my goal, that we accomplish that in the next 2 years by bringing another one of those online.
What we can do, and we actually had, I think we had a very good travel year as far as trade shows, very diverse group of shows that we went to, everything from international audience to aerospace to retail to power generation. So what we can do to kick things off, and certainly we could have been more responsive in sharing with you. There are some things we don't feel comfortable sharing as far as the actual company, because they might be a publicly traded company or might result into things that are probably inappropriate to talk about publicly. But what we can share with you, what we will share with you, is what show did we go to, how were we there, maybe who we met, or who generally we met with, or how many meetings we did. So we'll at least get some kind of metrics for you, and we'll use that also to share with you what we're currently planning for 2016 since it's the start of the year.
Yeah, that's great.
So I added to the parking lot, inform the council and engage council members in economic development activities as appropriate.
Yeah.
Okay. But the objective then is increase economic development, and then when you're putting together your plan, it would be to accomplish the kinds of things.
Right.
Or do we need to add that wording?
No, I think what you did, yeah.
Okay.
Obviously, that's inherent in increasing economic development.
Okay. All right. The next one you had was educate and engage the public on our resources, issues, and positives to tell the city's story, provide information and education, utilize a variety of relevant communication methods, including social media. Should that stay as an objective?
Yes, because we need Sue to do that.
She's not here.
She's not here.
Right.
Oh, so we should give her a lot of things to do since she's not here.
I think now's a good time to mention, we have had requests from different clubs in the community for council members to address them. What's a good council member to talk about this subject, because we all have different backgrounds. And I would like to see those things that aren't purely administrative or that Sue can handle as a public relations, the council to be available to do that, to go to the service clubs. And we have a lot of them that want to hear about certain things, and there's always a council member that can address that. And by having all the council members available, it also lightens the load for the mayor, or to help. And we've not really discussed it. I know it's available. I know people do it, but it's never been established as an understanding. I'd like to see more in that to get the clubs involved in our community, whether it's Rotary or Kiwanis or whatever.
Yeah.
We have a liaison with all those communities and do speak to those clubs.
I agree.
That's on her long-term goals that she now talks
Okay.
about. Not only making that available, but also reaching out to those clubs to let them know that
Yes.
Hey, we have
That-
this council member, that or whatever subject matter. Do you have a need for 20-minute, 30-minute speaker?
So I'll again add that to the parking lot. Pursue grants for city improvements. Do you see that as?
Doug, shouldn't that just be operational at this
Yeah,
point?
we're going to continue to do that.
Yeah.
I think we have.
You're gonna do it anyway.
Yeah.
You talked
So
about
it's
some of
an
the airport.
ongoing.
Yeah, I don't know that it needs to be for this year,
Yeah.
because it should be for every year. I mean, it should be operational,
Yeah.
it should
A few
be,
years ago, we were not doing it because we didn't have the staff to do it.
okay. Now we do.
I
and
think that
we're-
we do, and we have.
Turn them loose.
Talked about the
Get some
airport.
money.
We didn't talk about housing grants, and similar to the airport, there's been occasions with housing funding that we've been able to secure because we've been successful in using the grants that we have. We got a $2.8 million bicycle path grant from the state as well. We've got a few others, including the open data grant that is not monetary, but rather a consulting grant. So we've done that, and we will absolutely continue to do it.
Okay.
So it doesn't need to be a
I don't
specific
think it
because
does.
it's now
No,
part
as
of
long
your
as it's
ongoing.
operational, I don't think it's...
Okay.
I'd like to suggest we tweak the emphasis a little bit on number 10.
Okay.
I think, based on some of our experience, that we need to get into some fairly significant staff training on customer service and how to deal with people that come to the window, so to speak. Because I don't think it's been what it should be.
I agree.
So
Get a lot of
how would
complaints.
you like to word
I
that?
don't
come
have
from
any
Robert
idea.
Or we get the emails.
Without being insulting.
And I
Professional
called
development.
to
Well,
10
professional
minutes to
development,
get
sure,
to-
but I think it's specific staff training with a clear message from the council that the impression a person should get walking into City Hall is that they're welcome and we're glad to see them and we're here to help. And that needs to be the message instead of,
Ear bother and...
can you get over all the roadblocks I'm about to throw up in front of you? You think you're good enough? And I'm exaggerating. We all know I'm exaggerating.
Not really.
Well, I
But it's
think
been
as
enough
members of the
of a
council, we get the complaints.
Yeah.
And, whether it's regarding animal control or
And helpful.
Other issues.
Laura, and helpful. It's-
I put
Wel- Oh,
helpful,
helpful, welcome.
welcoming, or create, I'm probably not getting the right words.
It's not just business friendly, it's customer friendly, whatever the customer happens to be.
Helping them find a solution to their dilemma, rather than create more roadblocks. But I don't know how you word it, but you don't have to say it, you have to mean it. And often people who come to the counter have problems they don't know about.
Yeah.
And I know what I've been saying for 30 years sounds archaic. We are here to serve the public and have no other reason to exist.
Only reason.
It's the only reason.
Only reason we're here.
And I think we have to make sure that when the person comes to the counter, we convince them of that.
Well, customer-friendly service actually explains what you're
It's
supposed to
not
be doing.
It's not the citizen's duty to make sure I get a paycheck this month. It's not why.
Well, they're not doing a good job of it, it is.
So is it
So
increase
true.
helpful, welcoming, customer-friendly service levels from all city staff? Or something like that, I don't know.
And I think it's a training issue.
Well, then, training, that would be what you do to accomplish that, but what you're trying to, you'd like to see that. And I can word it any way you think it should be worded. I'm not sure if I got it right.
As good as I know how to say it.
I think I've got enough to work on.
Okay, all
Some of
right.
this is already started, but
Yeah.
good to have.
A lot of it started.
Yeah.
A lot of it
I'll
started.
just put training under that as a whole.
I mean, in a perfect world, no one would ever come to a member of the council to complain because staff's not doing their job, or to have a situation where, I need a council member to facilitate a meeting, and then once that happens, then all of a sudden, all's well. Things get done. And, of course, that's going to happen. That's always going to happen. There's no way to do away with that completely. But I do know that there are those situations, Doug, where, there are things that should never have risen to our level. Or, Gloria or myself should never have received an email on. After continually contacting staff to get something done, and for whatever reason it never got done, or staff never got back to that person, so they come to us. I think that I would like to see that go away. I don't know that there's any, nor should there ever be a reason that as a member of the council, the public shouldn't be able to contact us. I just, there are things, obviously, that you can identify and go, okay, in this particular situation, had staff responded, they would have never had to come to us. And I think that's, it's just simple communication.
Now, having said all that, we always know, and we've all learned, there are two sides to every story.
All right.
We'll get a complaint from somebody, and then you get into the details, you find, well, it wasn't that one-sided. So, I think we have to be very careful about ever meddling. But when we do get complaints, I think we need to pass them to Doug and let him take them from there. But I think I've heard it enough that there is an attitude sometimes with some people, I couldn't tell you names, in the system that just isn't helpful.
I have tried, when people come in for assistance at my office, because they know I don't charge anything, I just try to help. They'll come in, and of course sometimes it's just that they don't understand the billing system or whatever happened. but they come in and they couldn't get any assistance here, or maybe it's lack of communication or understanding or whatever it is. But I've tried calling many, many times, and what I get is that it takes a long time before they answer. And then they put you on hold. And then they really don't help you. So you go back to,
And you don't tell them you're the mayor that's calling?
well, finally I do.
Sometimes that's all it takes to get a reaction.
It
shouldn't take that.
But it shouldn't take that, I agree.
not take
But then it's all of a sudden it's like, we will do something, but what? They don't know what to do,
Yeah.
because they don't understand what to do either.
Yeah.
So you don't get an answer.
So that probably gives you enough to,
Yeah.
okay. What, are there other objectives that should be added based on the goals that you've established? Is there anything else or any language? that-
I have a question, I'm not sure it's an objective. How often does the council as a body look at this? Every 2 years, every year, do an evaluation every year? It's a little too late, 2 or 3 years later, to say, we adopted this, 2 years have gone by and we've done nothing.
Can you say that at the beginning?
Should there be an annual evaluation? An annual something?
Yeah, we certainly can. I mean, the plan
I mean,
is...
it doesn't need to be involved this whole thing, but
Right.
to look at it and say, are we working on it? If not, why not?
What's
What have
the
we
status?
accomplished? What's the status?
Yeah.
Well, this memo, Doug, that you did, I think is
That's a lot of
perfect.
Yeah,
This tells us what we
Yeah.
set as
Yeah.
objectives and what we've been able to accomplish.
that was good.
As long as we get this on an annual basis.
If we do this every 2 years, on the off year then, after the first of the year,
Okay,
I can
Yeah,
give
I
an
agree.
update on, where we are
That'll
in
work.
terms of, those 2-year goals.
okay. That's good.
So if I provide annual status updates to the
Sure.
council,
Sure, one would happen at the next planning meeting, and the other one would happen, at the midpoint.
And Doug, I look at those goals and I'm thinking to myself, well, I imagine, and this could potentially be part of what happened last time, but I imagine staff looks at those goals and says, okay, we didn't come up with objectives for everything, so maybe there's some objectives that staff creates to help us accomplish those goals. That should be part of what comes back to this council and says, okay, look, here's your objectives you created, but staff has some objectives that they've come up with to help you accomplish those goals. We want to make sure that the council's okay with these objectives. Because I think there are things up there that I don't have an objective for that I can list today, but I also believe that you have a staff here at the city that can come up with some objectives to help us accomplish those goals. And as long as we're all on board with it, then that gets us there.
To that point, I mean, the objectives that we just walked through, there's 10 of them. But the action plan that I went through, there's more than double
Right.
that.
Yeah.
Because it got a little more detailed and had multiples, and there was some extras that staff added because it would, speak to the overall goals as a whole, even though there wasn't an objective identified 2 years ago.
This would be a word of caution. I think it kind of keys off what you're saying. Last time, I think some very broad statements we made got turned into quote-unquote council policies that have been quoted to people as if we had approved this particular thing as a policy. Now, this is real hearsay evidence. I'm only hearing what I've been told. But I've been told that people at City Hall will say, well, that's council policy, when it really was staff's interpretation of what they thought we meant from...
Well, and I think that's why I look at this and I look at the objectives we've come up with, and obviously this can come back for some sort of formal adoption, but if additional objectives are developed and the action plan to accomplish the objectives as that's developed, I think the council needs to be kept up to date as that moves forward and as often as needed. I mean, I don't need to know every single council meeting what's been going on, but perhaps if, there are objectives or parts of the action plan that are developed by staff that can come back to the council so that we can, formally agree to it or add to it or take away.
As we did 2 years ago, we'll take all this work, I mean, that's sort of some of the next steps in our agenda, but staff will sit down and come up with sort of specific actions that we'll bring back to the council for, review, edit, adoption as an action plan for, it's really this year's, for 2016.
When do you envision that would come back to the council approximately?
I would say within 6 weeks.
Okay, so that would be in February or by the end of
By the end of February.
Okay. Or by March 1st.
You intend to have a comprehensive thing, or just take it in bites, or?
It would be sort of a list of actions that are planned for this calendar year to further the goals through these objectives.
Okay. So are there other specific objectives that as a council you would want to add to this? Or does this, do you see these as the primary council objectives to accomplish the goals?
We get too much on the plate, we're not going to know where to start.
You're right.
We need to stop at a point where we think we can handle it.
Yeah, I'm good with this. I mean, I like I said, I imagine that there might be some other things that come up from staff that would help us accomplish those goals, but I think this, increased economic development, if we're actually able to do what we want to do there, a lot of the other stuff will be improved as a result of additional tax revenue coming in. We can increase public safety, all those types of things can happen. Financial strength as a city will be a natural occurrence.
Didn't Dr. Husey at a large gathering say our taxes were down? He didn't know why, but they're down, and I came back and we checked it and they were up.
I can't remember the last time I heard Dr. Husey.
Did he say that at Joe Brady's fundraiser?
Yeah.
No, I didn't.
Was he saying specifically to Victorville or just the entire High
Victorville.
Desert?
No, Apple Valley's up, Hespery's up, Victorville was down. He didn't know why. I came back, Victorville was up. He apparently didn't get the latest copy.
You got it backwards, huh?
Well, I did get it backwards because we're up.
Yeah.
It might, and I've had a lot of questions about that. What's caused Victorville's taxes to go down, or sales taxes? But I said, it didn't. Yeah, it did. No, it didn't.
No.
And maybe we ought to have a policy that when we hear that, we bring it right back to Doug so he can respond direct.
Yeah, I did get the PowerPoint presentation. I'll forward it to you.
Please do, yeah. I
Because,
don't attend political fundraisers, so I wasn't
Yeah,
there.
no, but I...
Was that a political fundraiser?
Yes.
Sorry.
So let's just hear from each of the council members on the objectives. So, looks fine to you?
Yeah, I'm good with it.
Good, thank you.
Well, which led me to, very early, the first thing that happened is the Daily Press reported that crime was up. Somebody said that in Victorville?
What's that?
You said you saw that in today's paper, I guess?
What's that?
Crime was up?
Crime
Crime?
was up.
It was on the opinion page.
It was on the opinion.
Oh, it was the
It's
opinion
an
page.
editorial comment about the crime being up. And,
Okay.
but no, that somebody had made a proposal to the sheriff that was going to reduce the rising crime or something to that.
Okay. Well,
So,
when we, as a policy, the council, when those items occur in the news media or in some kind of media that informs the public of something that isn't true about the city, we ought to have an automatic policy that we respond.
and that your public...
What?
Yeah.
Really?
Sure.
Every time somebody says
So
something.
let's come back to the objectives. So
Sue's
good,
going to need
good,
an
good.
In the past, that has become my
And
full-time
these
job.
look good to you all?
Yes,
it's done.
Okay.
Yes, it's
And the mayor, do these look good as the
Yes,
objectives? Okay,
I believe that's,
all right.
that's the purpose.
And then the staff will then look at action plans to accomplish these, and as you said, there may be some others that the staff has. So let's, I've just been capturing some of your, I put them on a parking lot. You wanted to be able to quantify the number of jobs added, so that's just an action. Who does that, and who takes the lead on that?
Yeah, so we do that.
Okay.
He's
I
good.
just don't know if current.
Well, let me noodle it.
No, that's not good.
I wrote it down so I get to use it.
Inform the council and engage council members in economic development activities as appropriate.
That's Keith and myself both.
And those are ongoing. More council member talks with service clubs and other organizations, and you said your public information officer will be coordinating that. And is that Sue? And provide annual status updates to the council on the results of the annual objectives, and that would be done. And then provide an update to the council on the staff objectives and the action plans, and you said by the end of February, beginning of March. Right. So, are we there?
I think we're there.
Yeah.
I think so.
Well, then I will have all of this typed up and get it back to you, but let's have an opportunity to hear from everyone, and we'll let our mayor go last, and then she can wrap us up.
Okay.
But just, comments, what are you taking away from this session? And so hearing from each of you.
Well, I think this was good. We got to actually see what we've accomplished in the last 2 years since we originally had, the initial strategic planning session. I think there's still a lot to accomplish. There will always be a lot to accomplish for the city. But I do like where we've gone today, and hearing that the council is on board with getting back to economic development. Because I think if we can start doing a lot more of that and bring in some of those, those types of jobs, the revenues that will come into the city will allow us to do a lot more with public safety and code enforcement and all the other things that we want to accomplish. So I just look forward to moving forward with what we've accomplished today.
Should we just go
I like this process of talking to each other, because you just can't do this in a council meeting. We're sort of on stage there, and we don't have to be quite so. And I'm not very careful about what I say anyway, but we don't have to be quite so careful here. So I like that. And I hope we do the same thing on our water rate workshop coming up soon. So I like this. And I think we clarified where we were and where we are and how we want to tweak that stuff and change it going forward. I like that. Added some new stuff too.
Well, just as staff, it's certainly valuable to hear some collective positions, goals, objectives from the council. And it certainly helps guide us in how we administer the city and make decisions on a day-to-day basis. So it's helpful from that regard. And then doing it on a recurring basis makes it that much easier, especially because during the course of the year we seem to diverge sometimes and hear different interests or goals.
I'm just encouraged that we're continuing to think and act strategically. When we set this up 2 years ago, it was the first time ever. I think it was successful. I think we got a lot accomplished. And we are continuing to do that. So I'm encouraged that there's still interest in this format and continuing to sort of take a high-level look every once in a while at the city and where we're heading.
I really think what's most impressive is how much has been accomplished.
That's what I was
Just when you think back 2 years, you've already achieved a lot of the goals, and you're headed in the right direction with respect to the ongoing objectives. It's really impressive.
And, to add to that, we did so without, significant fighting from, the building industry or from the public or from anybody really. I mean, there were certainly some differences of opinion that, perhaps got more heated than they needed to be. But you look at some of the surrounding cities that attempted to adopt, a single serve regulation that I'll just say didn't go as smoothly as ours did, and I think that speaks to the measured approach and reasonableness of the council and the staff.
I appreciate this opportunity. I wasn't here for the last one, but I can certainly see with a lot of the information we've covered today, it could lend itself to a lot of interpretation. So what I'm looking forward to is just sort of let's digest that, let's bring it back, let's present it back to the council like Ryan was saying, And, let's work together and readjust as we need to go, as opposed to waiting for some crisis event or some business turned away or some issue that comes up, because I hope it's clear to people that are here today, and I appreciate the city staff here and all the other folks here that support the city. We have a lot of great folks working together on behalf of the city, and sometimes it's easy to say, jump to conclusions when a complaint is made, but I don't think we do that. I think we genuinely know that there are two sides of the story. There's a lot of great folks working for the city, but more communication is always better, and so that way you're not ever wondering what we're thinking, and we leave it to the city staff to execute, and I'm looking forward to these sessions. Anytime we get a chance to do this, I'm all for it. So I appreciate it. Thank you, Laura.
Well, as we said earlier, I'm surprised how much we've accomplished. Until we had the review, I knew the city had accomplished a lot. I didn't realize how much we'd accomplished. Secondly, some of the accomplishments that we didn't talk about was because we engaged other people to become stakeholders, which helped. And it also did away with what could have been real conflict or animosities. And I think, too, and again, this involves the community, and us encouraging the community to not only become involved, but become stakeholders in the process and let their opinions be known. So I'm encouraged by the whole process, and I'm pleased where we're at.
And I'm also very pleased and very happy to see what we have accomplished in the last 2 years, and I'm very pleased to see that we all work together, united, and we all have the same goals and for the city and for our constituents, and that's the only reason we have accomplished what we have, is because we work together and we think together. Our thinking is together. And I am also surprised that we accomplished as much as we did, and I hope we continue doing that.
It's a good idea to give credit where credit was due. We didn't do all the accomplishment, right? We're not the ones that went out and did all that stuff. It's
Everyone
a great staff.
concerned.
Yeah.
Everyone concerned.
We do have a great staff. We made that happen. Okay. I think there's public
So
comment.
I will move on to public comments, and I do have some cards. The first one that I have is Rosie Olvera. Will you please come up?
Good evening, City Council members. And my name is Rosie Olvera. I'm reaching out to you as a long-life resident of the Old Town Victorville. I moved here 13 years ago, and since I came here, I embraced my new journey, not only to better myself, my family, but my community as well. Since then, I'm honored to say that I graduated from Victor Valley High School, also from VVC, Victor Valley College, and I still continue to work to help others pursuing my criminal justice degree, also helping San John of Arc Church, and Prevention and Rescue, which is a non-profit organization that I volunteer for. Just last year, I had the opportunity and the privilege to purchase my first home in the Old Town Victorville community. Now, there is no denying that there is a negative affiliation to this area, and that's the reason why I have decided to work with my fellow neighbors to help to change that. Since October, I have decided to work with my neighbors to assess what we think and we perceive as the problems and what we see as areas that we have to improve in our community. Since then, I had the opportunity to talk to my neighbors, to business owners, to service providers, as well as educators. To this day, I have the privilege to talk over to have talked of over 100 people that they feel that Old Town is their home, that they make Old Town their home. The main things that we want to identify in Victorville region as what we do donate our home is see what the problems are and what our vision is for that area. And what the things that come up all the time and the things that we see is a lot of abandoned homes, vacant buildings, mental ill people in the streets, vandalism, homes that need repairs, and the lack of police presence in the area. When we talk to the residents about the vision for this region, we continue to hear the desire and the willingness to revive the neighborhood and make the Old Town Victorville a go destination. That's the reason why I'm here, because we are committed to work and help make this a better community and make our vision a reality. However, we know that we can't do this alone, and we ask you to help us to make the Old Town Victorville a priority so that way we can reach our goal and make this vision a reality. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dominic Molina? Is there a... Oh. I could see.
Hi, my name is Dominic Molina. I am a 5th grader at Earl Academy, and I live in Old Town Victorville. When I ride my bike or scooter to the store with my mom, we see a lot of businesses that are closed down, and some that you can tell have been closed for a very long time. I would like to see more businesses open up for business along 7th Street. This will help the street not look so empty and dead. I would like it to look more like what it used to look when Route 66 first opened. When we walk around the neighborhood, or when we are in my backyard, you can see a lot of really nice homes, and some are really ugly ones too. The ugly ones are the ones with broken windows, all boarded up. From my backyard, you can also see Highway 18 and the North 15th Freeway and the beautiful mountains and blue skies above us and Apple Valley. I wish all the homes in Old Town would be made beautiful again, and all the empty homes could be filled with families and children. Another thing I would like to see happen in Old Town is a safe place everyone can go after school or on weekends to play or have fun with friends and others. Sometimes like a community center or an activity valley. The last thing on my list is homeless. There are a lot of homeless people in Old Town. If we could renovate a building for them to live, maybe they wouldn't have to live in front of buildings or in the back of empty homes and buildings anymore. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you. Next person is Jennifer Neri.
My name is Jennifer Neri, and I'm a resident of Old Town. My family and I first moved here in March of 2011. And I wasn't born or raised here, but it doesn't take that to appreciate the Old Town and the historical connection it has with Route 66. I have seen the good and bad of this area, but which towns, American towns, don't have them. And there's the neighborhoods are being
that are known as being problematic, consisting of rundown, vacant, vandalized, abandoned homes and businesses overwhelmed with homelessness without the resources to obtain housing and the resources for them to sustain it. A low-income housing project for homeless and homeless families, and a center for community outreach for juveniles and young adults to congregate and have extracurricular activities and sports in a supervised or safe supervised area. And it says, my hope for Old Town is to see it blossom back into the town it used to be. Like in the pictures at the Route 66 Museum, with the businesses flourishing, and one hope is to bring the businesses back to them. And also the historical points of interest being restored to their original likeness and being regularly maintained. The University Prep property to be renovated into a community outreach center or possibly a police activity, where a place where the police and the community can come together to be involved in a positive way for our community, a center for people of all ages to have available for social interactions that are positive for all, like a recreational room or a game room, space for athletes to play sports, and a place for those just to congregate in a positive but supervised area. I believe with some strategic planning and some affirmative action and also community involvement, this could be possible. I am looking forward to this, and I am proud to be part of it and advocate for Old Town and to support and assist our community in every way possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we have Charlene Elwine.
Good evening. I'm Charlene Elwine, and I've been a volunteer youth minister at St. Joan of Arc for about a year and a half. It's through my work that I've become a part of the Old Town Victorville community, and I have grown to appreciate it and everything it has to offer. I'm here today because I would like to be an active part of improving and revitalizing Old Town Victorville. I have observed that many of the people that call Old Town Victorville their home have concerns about the abandoned businesses and homes, the vandalism, and the use and or dealing of drugs in their neighborhoods and safety. These issues have led many people in the neighboring communities to believe that Old Town is not safe and therefore is not worth revitalizing. However, I, along with the other people that call Old Town their home, know that this community has a lot to offer. From the St. Joan of Arc Church to the Victor Valley Rescue Mission, to the individual businesses on 7th Street, like the Catholic Bookstore or the Santa Fe Trading Company, we all continue to work together to keep the treasure that is Old Town Victorville alive. I personally would like to see a commitment from the city to prioritize the Old Town Victorville community for economic renewal and revitalization. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we have Teresa Soriano.
Hi, good evening, members of the council. My name is Claire Soriano, and I want to commend you for starting off this 2016 by revisiting the city's strategic plan and helping us create a stronger and more vibrant community. I'm reaching out to you as a Victorville resident and active member and volunteer of the St. Joan of Arc Church that is located on 6th and 8th Street, right in the heart of Old Town Victorville. I have spent the majority of my teenage years in the Old Town Victorville area, and I have witnessed how great a community can be when we all work together and help create a community. I have also witnessed not so great things in our region. For instance, I've witnessed windows of cars being shattered, cars being broken into, and limited lighting throughout all our streets, all of which contribute to the perception of an unsafe neighborhood. I have grown up in the community, and I would like to see it taken care of. I would love to be able to walk around surrounded by a vibrant nightlife where all high desert residents feel safe and welcome to come. It is because of this vision that I have started working with a group of residents who want to help improve the Old Town Victorville community. We have begun talking to individual residents, volunteers, and business owners in the area to help identify what the needs are. Some of the recurring issues we continue to see include abandoned buildings, homes needing repairs, vandalism, public use of alcohol, drug dealing, and the lack of police presence. We, the residents and active members of the Old Town Victorville area, are committed to working with each other to help improve our region. As you continue to discuss your strategic plan for the upcoming years for the city, we ask that you make the Old Town Victorville region a priority and help work with us to bring back to the glory days that the old Route 66 in Victorville was known for. Thank you.
Thank you. Arlie Arcineda. Is he here? Arlie? Yes. Cardone Nichols?
Good afternoon, members of the council, city staff. My name is Gordon Nichols. I'm with the Building Industry Association. I just wanted to make a brief comment today about the visioning process. Number one, that a healthy city needs a wide variety of residential offerings. At BIA, we support all types of home building, including high quality and highly efficient homes, affordable communities for families to thrive in and not struggle. And I guarantee you, if you ask families, housing can never be too affordable. We also need a wide variety of starter homes for younger people to reinvest in their hometowns. And you need a wide variety of senior housing for aging populations. We support all types of housing and encourage this visioning process. And I applaud you today for going through this envisioning exercise and trying to tackle these very complex issues. I also encourage you to continue to engage the business and development community. The visioning exercise you've done today is very difficult, but an even more difficult task is building that vision, building that dream. And hopefully we will be able to work together, continue to work together to build that dream. And hopefully the dream is too far of a fantasy on any means. But I just want to continue to once again say thank you for creating the focus group and for working with us on a number of these issues, and we continue to look forward to move forward on these issues and work together with you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That was the last card that I have. So at this time, I will ask the declaration of closed session items by our city attorney.
Thank you, Mayor Garcia. We actually have 7 closed session items this evening. They're all set forth on the agenda. Item A is anticipated litigation pursuant to Government Code 549.56.9 potential case against the city. Item B is also anticipated litigation and sets forth the facts and circumstances related to that litigation, also pursuant to Government Code 549.56.9. D4. Item C and E are both real estate negotiations. The negotiating parties and the properties are set forth. Those are both pursuant to Government Code 549.56.8. And then item D is anticipated litigation, again pursuant to Government Code 549.56.9, a potential case, and the facts and circumstances are set forth on the agenda. Items F and G are related. They are the existing litigation pursuant to Government Code 549.56.9 D1. It is the SEC versus City of Victorville litigation. One is on behalf of the Airport Authority. The other is on behalf of the city. To the extent there is reportable action, we will report it at the conclusion of the closed session.
Thank you.
Since we're going into executive session, we don't go into here, do we? Do we go into?
We typically adjourn to conference room 50, correct?
Thank you.
Okay, this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
The meeting of the City Council concluded at 6:40 p.m. and there was no reportable action out of closed session.